Welcome back, everyone. We're diving deep into the world of crypto today, all thanks to a recent YouTube video that's got people talking.
Yeah, it really brings up some fascinating points, doesn't it? Like some bold predictions for XRP and this whole idea of Amazon secretly hoarding Bitcoin.
Right. Like,
Yeah.
what's actually going on behind the scenes? It's kind of wild to think about.
Totally.
So let's start with XRP. Our source says that Bitstamp, that big crypto exchange, they're predicting a huge year for XRP in 2025. They actually call it a potential landmark year.
Yeah, and they have some pretty good reasons for thinking that. There's talk of Ripple going public, a new stablecoin launching on the XRP ledger, and even a derivatives platform being built on that same ledger. Oh, and we can't forget about the possibility of XRP ETFs getting approved in the US.
Wow, it's a lot happening. It feels like a chain reaction. One thing leads to another, and suddenly XRP is everywhere.
Exactly. It's like a ripple effect. Pun intended, right?
Uh, Chris.
But seriously, the source uses a really cool analogy to explain how all this activity on the XRP ledger could boost XRP's value.
Oh, I'm intrigued. What is it?
They compare it to land value. Think of XRP as the land, and all these developments, stablecoins, ETFs, derivatives, they're like buildings being built on that land. The more stuff that's happening, the more valuable the land, or in this case, XRP, becomes.
Okay, I like that. It makes it easier to understand. But how does more activity on the ledger actually make XRP more valuable in the real world?
Well, it comes down to demand. If you want to use those new financial tools being built on the XRP ledger, you need XRP. So the more people use those tools, the higher the demand for XRP, and that drives the price up.
So it's like a supply and demand thing, essentially. Makes sense.
Right, exactly.
Our source even throws out some price predictions, mentioning a range of $21 to $24 for XRP. That's a pretty big jump.
Yeah, it is. But, price predictions are just that, predictions. The crypto market is notoriously unpredictable. Things change quickly, and unforeseen events can happen.
True, true. So it's exciting to think about the possibilities, but we should keep our expectations in check, too.
Definitely.
Okay, so now let's switch gears a bit and talk about this idea of institutional investors, the big players, secretly buying up Bitcoin.
Right, right. The source argues that companies like Amazon, Apple, maybe others, they might already have a ton of Bitcoin, but they're keeping it quiet.
That's kind of strange, isn't it? If they believe in Bitcoin so much, why not just announce it? Wouldn't that be good for their image?
Well, there are a few reasons why they might stay quiet. First, they don't want to drive up the price prematurely. Imagine if Amazon announced they were buying billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. The price would skyrocket.
I guess that makes sense. They want to buy it before everyone else catches on.
Exactly. Plus, public companies have to deal with a lot of regulations and scrutiny. Announcing a huge Bitcoin investment could cause a lot of headaches for them.
I see. So they're playing it safe.
Pretty much. And there's another interesting angle here.
Oh, what's that?
The source suggests that these companies could be hiding their Bitcoin investments within their complex corporate structures, like setting up subsidiaries or something.
So it's like a shell game.
Kinda, yeah. It makes it really hard to track where the money is actually going.
Sneaky. But is there any evidence to support this, or is it just speculation?
Well, the source points to a few things, like the huge amount of money flowing into Bitcoin ETFs. They say it's highly unlikely that all that money is coming from everyday investors.
Right, it would have to be bigger players like hedge funds or something, right?
Exactly. And then there are those SEC filings that show these massive Bitcoin purchases, but they don't always reveal who the buyer is.
So we know someone is buying a lot of Bitcoin, but we don't know who. That's pretty intriguing.
Right. It's like trying to solve a puzzle, but you're missing some of the pieces.
And it makes you wonder what else might be going on behind the scenes.
Totally. The source even makes a bold statement. If big institutions were interested in Bitcoin, wouldn't they be speaking out against it? Wouldn't they be warning their clients about the risks?
You have a point. Their silence is kind of deafening, isn't it?
Exactly. Their actions, or lack thereof, might be telling us more than their words ever could.
It's definitely something to think about. So what does all this mean for our listeners? Should we all just assume that the big institutions are buying up all the Bitcoin?
Not necessarily. I mean, we should always be skeptical and do our own research, but the evidence does suggest that institutional involvement in crypto is probably much bigger than most people realize.
Okay, so it's about connecting the dots and looking for those patterns. The source also mentions Michael Saylor, the guy from MicroStrategy, who's a huge Bitcoin advocate. They say he's been actively encouraging other companies to invest.
Yeah, and they specifically talk about a presentation he gave to a big company, maybe even Microsoft. about why they should get into Bitcoin.
Interesting. We don't know what happened after that meeting, but the fact that these conversations are happening at such a high level is pretty significant.
It means Bitcoin is being taken seriously by some really influential people.
So let's say, hypothetically, that these big companies are secretly stockpiling Bitcoin. What does that mean for the future of traditional finance?
That's the big question, isn't it? If this trend continues, it could mean a big power shift in the financial world.
How so?
Well, cryptocurrencies, especially Bitcoin, they challenge the traditional financial system. They're decentralized, transparent, and censorship resistant. As more institutions adopt Bitcoin, it could weaken the control of banks and governments over our money.
So are we talking about a financial revolution here?
It's definitely possible. The source even says Bitcoin is about to become the world reserve currency. Now, that might sound extreme, but it shows that some people believe Bitcoin could play a massive role in the global economy.
Wow, that's a long way from where Bitcoin started, being seen as this risky fringe thing.
It just goes to show how fast things can change in the crypto world.
But wouldn't a shift to a decentralized currency like Bitcoin cause a lot of chaos and disruption?
There would definitely be big changes, both good and bad. Some people would benefit greatly, others would struggle.
Can you give us some examples?
Sure. On the positive side, it could give people more control over their own money and reduce their reliance on banks. That would be especially helpful in parts of the world where people don't have easy access to banking services.
That makes sense.
But on the other hand, it could make it harder for governments to control things like inflation and enforce financial regulations.
So it's a bit of a double-edged sword. There's a lot of potential for good, but also potential challenges to overcome.
Absolutely. And there's still a lot we don't know about how a Bitcoin-based financial system would actually work in practice. There are technical, regulatory, and social hurdles that would need to be addressed.
It sounds like we're at a crossroads.
In a way, yes. We're witnessing something new and potentially revolutionary, but it's still unfolding.
Well, this deep dive has given us a lot to think about. We've explored some bold predictions, uncovered potential hidden trends, and pondered the implications of a future shaped by cryptocurrencies.
And that's just the beginning. There's more to unpack from this insightful YouTube video, so let's dive back in and see what other gems we can unearth.
Let's do it.
You know, one thing the source really hammers home is that the mainstream media, they're often late to the party when it comes to crypto.
Yeah, like they're always playing catch up.
Exactly. They say by the time institutional adoption hits the headlines, the smart money, the people who really know what they're doing.
The ones who are actually making the big moves.
Right. They're already in. It's almost like the public is always a step behind.
It's like we're watching the ripples on the surface,
Hmm.
but the real waves are happening underwater.
Perfect analogy. And this disconnect, it's not just for big investors, it affects everyone. If you're waiting for the news to tell you when to buy crypto, you might already be missing out.
So how do we stay ahead of the curve? How do we filter out all the noise and find those real opportunities?
It boils down to, being critical, doing your own research. Don't just follow the hype. Dig deeper, look at different sources, and form your own opinions.
Become a crypto detective.
Ha! Exactly. And this ties in with what the source says about the long game in crypto. They talk about how those early Bitcoin adopters, the ones who held on through all the ups and downs.
Ones who had dime in hand.
Yeah, those guys. They've been rewarded big time. It's like they say, patience is a virtue.
Especially in a market like crypto that can be so volatile.
Oh, absolutely. And they actually compare the whole evolution of the crypto market to the early days of the internet.
Now that's an interesting comparison. I'm curious to hear more about that.
Think back to the 90s, right? The internet was this niche thing. Most people didn't understand it. Some were even scared of it.
Yeah, I remember those days. Dial-up modems, those clunky websites.
Exactly. But look at where we are now. We can't live without the internet. It's changed everything.
It's crazy how much things have changed in just a few decades.
And the source believes crypto is on a similar path. What might seem like a fringe thing today could become totally mainstream in the future. And the people who get in early, the ones who see the potential and stick with it.
They're the ones who stand to benefit the most.
Exactly. And are we already seeing signs of this mainstream adoption happening?
Well, we've got companies like PayPal and Square integrating crypto into their platforms.
Right. That makes it so much easier for people to buy and use crypto.
And like we discussed earlier, there's a lot of institutional interest too.
Definitely. Plus, we're seeing more and more countries exploring those central bank digital currencies, the CBDCs.
True. True. So even though they're not truly decentralized like Bitcoin, it shows that governments are starting to take digital currencies seriously.
Right. It's like they're dipping their toes in the water.
It feels like we're on the verge of a massive shift in finance. The lines between traditional finance and crypto are getting blurry.
Totally. And that's what makes this space so exciting. It's always changing, always evolving.
Now, going back to those who believe institutional investment is much bigger than we know, what does that mean for XRP? Is there a connection there?
That's a great question. Our source mostly talks about Bitcoin, but it makes you wonder if these institutions are looking at XRP too, especially with all those predictions for big growth in 2025.
What would make XRP attractive to those big investors?
Well, remember how we talked about Ripple potentially going public? That could be huge. It would make XRP more transparent and regulated, which is something institutions really care about.
Makes sense. And what about the new stablecoin and the derivatives platform on the XRP ledger? Would those be appealing to institutions?
Oh, absolutely. Stablecoins offer that stability that big investors want, protection from those crazy price swings. And a derivatives platform allows them to use more complex trading strategies.
So even though our source doesn't specifically talk about XRP in this context, it's definitely possible that institutions are watching it closely.
Totally. And if those predictions about XRP taking off in 2025 come true, we might see even more institutional interest.
It seems like the crypto space is full of potential, but also a lot of uncertainty.
The only thing that's certain is change. We need to stay open-minded, adaptable, and always keep learning.
Well said. Our source has given us a lot to think about. What else can we learn from them?
Let's keep diving deeper. The source talks about the psychology of the crypto market, and I think you'll find it fascinating.
I'm all ears. Let's dive back in. So we've talked about XRP's potential and this whole idea of institutional investors secretly buying up Bitcoin. What else does our source have to say?
Well, they spend some time talking about the psychology of the market, like how people react to new technology and how that plays out in crypto.
Oh, interesting. So are they saying they're like different types of crypto investors?
Yeah, kind of. They talk about these different phases of adoption. Like with any new technology, there are the early adopters.
The ones who are willing to take the biggest risks.
Exactly. They're driven by the potential, the belief in the tech, even if it's still unproven. They're not afraid of a little volatility.
They're the ones who bought Bitcoin when it was practically worthless.
Right. Then, as things progress, you get the early majority. They see the practical applications, the potential for returns. They're a bit more cautious, but still ahead of the curve.
Makes sense. So where do the skeptics fit in?
They're the late majority and the laggards, the ones who resist change, only jumping on board when it's almost unavoidable.
The people who finally got a smartphone when everyone else already had one.
Exactly. But the point is, understanding these different phases can be really useful for investors.
Oh, I see what you mean. If you can figure out where we are in that cycle, you can get a better idea of what might happen in the future.
Right. And the source also points out that the mainstream media often lags behind these phases. By the time they're reporting on something, the early adopters have already made their moves.
So it's like buy the rumor, sell the news.
Exactly. So it's important to do your own research, understand the technology, and not just rely on what you see in the headlines.
Be your own crypto expert.
Exactly. And the source really stresses the importance of the long game in crypto. They say the market is cyclical. There will be booms and busts.
But don't panic sell when things go down.
Right. It's about having conviction in the technology and its long-term potential. Don't get distracted by the short-term noise.
It's about seeing the forest, not just the trees.
Perfect analogy. And they remind us that crypto is still young. Just like the internet took time to reach its full potential, so will crypto. Patience is key.
We're still in the early days. It's exciting to think about what the future holds.
It really is. We're potentially witnessing the birth of a new financial system, one that could empower individuals in ways we haven't even imagined yet.
Wow, this deep dive has been amazing. We've learned about XRP, institutional investment, the psychology of the market, the importance of the long game.
It's been a great discussion. I hope our listeners have enjoyed it as much as we have.
To our listeners, we leave you with this. As crypto continues to evolve, what role will you play? Will you be an observer, a participant, or a pioneer? The choice is yours. Stay curious, stay informed, and stay engaged. The future of finance is being written right now, and you have the opportunity to be a part of it. Until next time, keep diving deep.